Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Thank you, Wilson. Thank you.
I'm going to start with the short music. Are we ready? So last month we started talking about the precepts in Buddhism, because the precepts play a pivotal role in our practice and in our entry into the Buddha Dharma and the realm of the Buddha. And we had managed to make it through the first 3 precepts, and today is the 4th precept. So what I thought I'd do is I'd review what I discussed last week, and then I'll leave just a few minutes for the 4th precept. I'm just kidding. The 4th, the 4th precept is the sex precept. So we're all here for that, right? So Sun Sanim used to tell me, Sun Sanim is a very good speaker. He's a very good public speaker. And he used to tell me that if your audience is getting bored, tell them a pithy Zen story. He said, if they're still bored, bring up sex. So the 4th precept is not to commit sexual misconduct. So, and the traditional interpretation of the 4th precept is twofold. In a monastic context, it means celibacy. Okay, so like when I became a monk, I took the whole 250 precepts. I think about the first 20 precepts were about all the ways I couldn't do sex. And so it was very, very specific and very thorough. So the monastic prohibition on sex includes a prohibition on masturbation. So they really mean it. So, and then the interpretation of the 4th precept for lay people is monogamy. So you're supposed to get married and only have sex within a married context. So my teacher used to say to people, become a monk or get married. So that's what he was pretty intense about that, actually. So and it's interesting about this traditional interpretation, this kind of twofold interpretation between a monastic interpretation and a lay interpretation, because it brings to the forefront a kind of tension in Buddhist practice between the monastic ideal and the lay ideal, which the monastic ideal is not very strong in the West. There are a few traditional Buddhist monasteries in the West, very few. There's 1 or 2 in England that I'm aware of. I'm not really aware of a traditional Buddhist monastery outside of the ethnic community in the United States. So it's in the history of Buddhism, there's always been this kind of conflict which occasionally bubbles to the surface about whether a life that includes a sexual component is conducive to enlightenment. In many traditions of Buddhism, notably Theravada Buddhism, but also some Mahayana schools of Buddhism, the idea is that you can't become enlightened until you become a celibate monastic. Usually in those traditions you have to become a celibate monk. Being a celibate nun won't do. And it's interesting, I was a monk for 6 years. One of the things which is really interesting to me is how in traditional Buddhism lay people really want that component of Buddhism present. I'm talking about countries like Korea, where I spent some time. And one of the questions I've never been able to resolve in my own mind is what is it about if someone gives up sex, that's supposed to make them more holy, more spiritually advanced. It's very interesting, that relationship. It's considered very admirable. My experience is that it makes most people who do that extremely cranky. You know, so I mean, it's very interesting that if we can have a discussion about this, but in the history of Buddhism, one of the things, the topics that divided the schools of Buddhism was whether or not a lay person could become enlightened. So, in some schools of Buddhism, that is definitely denied. There are sutras which, in fact, specifically say it is not possible for a householder to become enlightened. It's possible for a householder to gain tremendously good karma and have a very good rebirth, but in the context of these schools of Buddhism, it is not possible for them to become enlightened. Why? Because they're attached to sex. That's the pivot. In other schools of Buddhism, that is not considered the case. And of course, the premier sutra expressing the householder's point of view is the Vimalakirti Nirdesa Sutra. For those of you who haven't read it, Vimalakirti was a layman who, in this sutra, he is ill, and the Buddha sends his disciples to visit Vimalakirti to express concern about his illness. And when the Buddha asks his disciples one by one to go visit him, and they all decline. They say they don't want to go visit him. And the Buddha says, well, why? And they said, well, because the last time I had a conversation with him, he corrected me on the Buddha Dharma. And then they recite this conversation, about how this layperson explains the Buddha Dharma much better than the monastic disciples. And of course, the implication is very clear that it's possible for a layperson to be thoroughly versed and to thoroughly practice the Dharma. Another sutra relevant to this is the Srimala, the Lion's Roar of Queen Srimala, who Queen Srimala is a lay woman who has a similar relationship to the Dharma and teaches the Dharma. So you have this kind of division in Buddhism, very ancient, about what is the role of a monastic. The monastic presence in Buddhism can be looked upon. Well, let me give a metaphor. I often compare the Buddhist monastic sangha to a symphony orchestra. So a symphony orchestra specializes in the performance of a certain kind of music. And in many cities throughout the world, the symphony orchestra is supported at public expense. There's no obvious economic benefit to having a symphony orchestra, but it is considered beneficial to the community to have it, to support it. In a similar sort of way, you can view the Buddhist monastic sangha as specialists in the Dharma. And if you value the Dharma, then supporting that kind of specialization would be considered valuable. And they give performances of the Dharma. That's not so far-fetched as it may sound, because in the beginning, the monastic sangha did chant and recite Buddhist scriptures for the lay people, at the quarters of the moon. They would come and they would listen to it. Does that mean that, the monastic sangha is superior to the lay sangha? That view does not seem to have taken root in the West, but it is a view that I want everyone here to understand. It is a view that you will encounter in Buddhism. It's an interesting question. Why is sex such a strong division, dividing point in the history of Buddhism? Food is not such a strong dividing point. For example, there are disagreements in Buddhist schools about what constitutes proper diet, but they don't go to the extreme of if you don't follow our diet, you will never become enlightened, or something like that. It's not the same kind of issue. The reason I bring up food is that if you compare, the drive for sex to the drive for food, there are a lot of comparisons you can make. It's natural to eat. It's it's natural also to want to engage in sexual activity. But on the other hand, it is certainly the case that sexual activity is a field for immense suffering. And people do, in fact, use sexual activity to generate a great deal of harm and suffering among each other. Given that, and it seems to have always been the case as far back as we can look. It's like everybody is confused about it, right? So everybody seems to lack clarity about this issue. So I think, putting this fourth precept about no sexual misconduct, if you place it within a larger ethical context, like the overall context of the precepts, it perhaps becomes a little clearer. So the precepts are specific examples of a general ethical understanding to do no harm. To do no harm. And sexual misconduct means doing harm to others. For example, in some of the monastic precepts, there are prohibitions against gossip and harmful speech. In the Eightfold Path, there is one of the facets of the Eightfold Path is right livelihood. Right livelihood is understood as a livelihood which does not harm others. Similarly, sexual misconduct is conduct in the sexual arena which harms others. I think there are fairly obvious examples of that, and that would be, rape would be an obvious example of sexual activity which harms others. But then it quickly becomes really foggy, and also sexual activity that harms oneself, is questionable. Primarily, I understand this as remembering that when we engage in sexual activity, there is another person present. And that, to me, is the key to understanding this precept. That it is often the case that in the heat of sexual passion, the fact that there's someone else there falls away. And to remain present to the presence of the other person is to me, the ground of operating in an ethical manner in this arena, being aware of the other person. So, does that make sense, or do people have questions or comments at this point? Or, yes, Clint?
But that's not the sole criteria.
No.
About what is ethical or
no, it's just the beginning. Okay.
When you talk about the presence of another person and somehow it gets so intense that falls away, what I translate that into is the impermanence of the ego and the impermanence of the body and the non-substantiality and the emptiness of both. And that if that condition takes place and one gets as close to formlessness as you can in form, then that's outside of the precept, and in that sense becomes so intense and to many people so frightening and overwhelming. It's like the visitation of the gods, and that overwhelming quality has frightened people for a long period of time. Would you make a comment about getting as close to the formless in form as you can in sexual union, and the falling away of virtually everything at that form? You're just trembling on the edge of formlessness.
Oh. Well. know. I knew it would move in this direction. No, see, to me, if I had one wish about sex, is that people would view it as ordinary and not extraordinary. So, to me, what you're talking about is like, or what I'm talking about, losing the sense of someone else being present, isn't significantly different from, abusing someone at work, and not recognizing if you're in a supervisory position, and you treat someone like they're a thing, to be disposed of or worked till they're exhausted, and then fired. That's an extreme example, but it does happen. A company will work someone, then they're exhausted, and then they can't do the work anymore, so they're dismissed. That's not being present to the presence of a person. Similarly, in a sexual relationship, if one's sole criteria is to find someone to fulfill your desire, and then dismiss them, that would be a similar kind of relationship. That's the kind of thing that I was talking about. See, one of the difficulties in speaking about sex is that there's so much else wrapped up in it that it's hard to see it. So a sense of self-esteem, one's sense of identity, one's money is intimately wrapped up with sex, because like when you take you get ready for a date and you want to go to a good restaurant, this, that, the other, money, of course, is involved with prostitution, but it's also involved with getting, new clothes or impressing someone. So, and money brings in a lot of other issues of self-worth. So it's hard to put all of that aside and just look at sex without all that other attendant stuff. And that's what I mean if I had one wish about sex, is that people would view it as ordinary, not extraordinary. So there are people who have extreme difficulty with food, like anorexia, bulimia, that kind of thing. And usually the reason they have such difficulty with it is that they can't see food for what it is. What's wrapped up in food for them is, their sense of self-esteem, their sense of identity. In a sense, they're not even eating. When they're engaged in this. So, to get through that, you have to unpack all of that. But in our culture, the packaging around sex is really pushed, because people have found that you can sell things by attaching, sexual energy to it. Am I responding to your question in a useful way?
That's an interesting counterpoint. I guess my basic experience would be with, for example, body electric, which bills itself as Taoist tantric, but you try to get a good definition on that. It's very vague from some of the body electric folks. But nevertheless, there are substantial numbers of men and women who do that, who do channel and use those energies, experience them to an extraordinary fullness in an ordinary way. That is, if only your ego can suffer, if only your ego suffers during your sex, well, leave your ego behind and just go ahead and fly. And there are some people who do, in my opinion, get close to formlessness in form through that. Now, admittedly, it isn't formlessness, and admittedly, you should have a practice on the side that helps you go even further than that, but it does provide a nice glimpse.
Any activity can be used as a door to the transcendental. Sex is not peculiar in this area. I'll be honest with you, I'm more than a little skeptical when I meet people who tell me that they can use sex in that way. But of course it's possible. It's also possible that a walk in the woods will, open that door. Many people have had that experience when listening to music, okay? Or reading poetry, or right. But a genuine experience of the transcendental is not dependent upon conditions. So when you, let's see, let me give an example. Take for example transcendental change. Okay, so by transcendental change I mean that everything is changing. Okay, the fact that everything is changing means that all colors are changing. Okay, but change itself is not a color. Okay? Shapes and forms are changing. Change itself is not a form or a shape. Sounds are changing, but change itself is not a sound. That's what I mean by change is a transcendental, or a facet of the transcendental. Right? So it is possible to access transcendental change through sexual union or sexual experience. It is possible to access transcendental change by observing the flowing of a river. And many people have accessed the realm of the transcendental by observing the flow of the river. So all I'm saying here is that I don't believe that sexual activity is special in this realm, and I also it's fraught with difficulties. Fraught with difficulties that observing a river do not present.
Jim, to me, I think it's more quite simple for sexuality. First of all, I would say I won't compare food and sex. Food, you need to sustain your body, to go on to study, to be able to rise to that level. But sex, simple as that, if you really look into the precept of desire, it's one of desire. The reason that with food, certain monastic practitioners or monks, they're not allowed to eat food, certain food, simply certain food to stimulate your system. So make you desire for sexual, the effect on that. There's a reason behind that food, besides not to kill, but certain food. A monk, a Chinese monk, they even won't allow you to eat garlic. Because garlic is a stimulant your hormone, whatever. That's one thing. But and with sex is probably designed to destroy anything. Therefore, the consequence is you, me, that I recognize or not. If I really want to be a monk and become a simplify my life, be able to enlighten by release of the desire, I better work on my sexuality of desire that part. I'm a lay practitioner. If you really want to practice, follow the teaching of Buddhism, the desire, sexual desire, is probably the main big desire of humankind. If you really aim to that direction, practice, once you put yourself up to a higher level, sooner or later, this sexual desire, you begin to see the light of, okay, begin to above the sexual desire. Sooner or later, you will live, go along without that, because you're able to see that the desire, that what the desire going, the consequence will cost you. You can even sit to meditate if you have this sexual urge in your feeling. You know, therefore, I think it's so simple. So simple. Think about basic Buddhism teaching. That's why I see it. Thank you.
I understand your view. It'd be interesting to have a long discussion with you about it. I'm not sure that I agree with it or not, because like if I'm sitting in meditation and a sexual desire appears, which sexual desire does appear in my mind while I'm meditating, if it moves through me in the way that any other thought moves through me, then I do not see that it is a problem. So, like simply the appearance of sexual desire in meditation does not seem to me to be the issue, unless I misunderstood what you said.
It is an issue.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a disagreement about that. That's good. That's good. But yeah.
Quick question. If these monks that were celibate all these years aren't cranky, it doesn't seem like sexual celibacy is such a pathway to enlightenment after all. It sounds like it's a pathway to frustration and in its own way compulsiveness. I wonder if you could respond to that.
Well, and I'm sure Ding Hao will also want to respond to it, because we might have a different view, but it's been my experience that if someone is going to engage in celibacy, that they need to know what they're doing. They need to know how to handle the energies that will appear, when they enter into celibacy. And it's also been my experience that very, very few Buddhist monks are given this information. What do you do when you wake up, at 3:30 in the morning and you have a heart on? It's that simple. That kind of information is not available. At least I have not found it available within a Buddhist monastic context. So what I've seen in Buddhist monasteries is that Buddhist monks go to the red light district. That's the normal outlet for that energy. What?
A Buddhist monk going to red light district.
Are you shocked?
I am shocked.
I didn't.
Maybe you could be right.
He's right.
But in China or in Thailand practice, you'll be out.
Oh yes, yeah, you'll be out if you're caught.
And this power by respect on monk, because certain discipline to me require the monk got to fulfill the discipline. Otherwise, it's not going to respect on me. That's the whole thing about become a monk. A Buddhist monk is not going to become other religions that go out and preaching. Become a Buddhist monk. First discipline, benefit yourself. You practice yourself. Then you are center. You're able to rise in the higher level of humankind.
But my question to you, Ding Hao, is this: why is it at a higher level to be celibate? I question that. I am raising the question that being celibate is, in fact, spiritually higher than being non-celibate.
Because problem desire, sexual desire, is come from the desire of anything else. If you want that desire occupying you, you're not going to have a center.
Well, I'm not sure that's true. Yeah.
It's not easy. I'm not saying easy.
I just want to jump in here because when I hear you talk about sex as one single thing.
Yeah.
But I never hear the word love, for example, combined with the sexual act.
I was hoping you knew that. Relationship.
I wish you.
But it's a very good point.
Because that's what it's all about.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more.
In Japanese, monks are married and they have children, and so therefore they must be practicing with this desire as part of their practice. Unless they
after they have children, they don't have sex anymore, which I've never had a chance to ask the Japanese monk that. But I've often wondered if they chase each other around the bed in some sort of joyful, sexual thing when they're doing that. And so it's often said that like sex is a very powerful emotion, but also very powerful emotions can give you very powerful transformations if you learn how to practice with that. So it could give you great results also.
Can I?
Go ahead.
It's okay. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
My name is Rolf.
Rolf brought up the question of love, and to me, that's the resolution, for in a lay life for sexual activity, that which brings in the whole question of relationships, and the purpose of a relationship within practice. I have a view about sexual activity that I'm strongly in favor of monogamous relationships, but the way I conceive of it myself is that one should not engage in sexual activity with another person unless you'd be willing to be monogamous with them. That should be, that should be the ground on which sexual activity takes place. Falling in love with someone is a falling away of self. And all of a sudden, the world opens up, and there's this other person. And there's a falling away of, viewing the world just from one's own axis of understanding. So very profound experience. Very profound experience. And if cultivated, that love can become universal. So it's the ground for, it can be the ground for profound insight into universal kindness, universal love, extending that love to all sentient beings. It's very interesting, though, how difficult relationships are. It's like we've all had this, experience, how relationships turn sour. And one of the reasons I think that they turn sour is because we don't realize that true love changes. True love changes. Or, to put it another way, true love is impermanent. True love is impermanent. Because, well, everything is impermanent, but when, the experience of love is so powerful that we reach out and we try and trap it, cling to it. When we don't cling to it, something really extraordinary happens. Love blossoms into gratitude. Okay? But it's that trick, that pivot of letting that, those first moments of, or even first year, if you're very lucky, of tremendous love, and then it changes. It shifts. It's not as exciting, not as, the heart doesn't beat quite as fast, and that sort of thing. Well, of course, everything changes. But if you realize what that other person has given you, gifted to you, that experience, that falling away of self-centeredness, gratitude can blossom from that. And that's how the relationship continues, on the foundation of that gratitude. Does that make sense? Or?
Yeah, it does, but I still think, they say after a while, it doesn't give you that satisfaction anymore. But I have that relationship, especially in friendship, they still fill me with so much joy, just to be with that individual. That is actually, because when you mention this, to me, I certainly get the sexual act in again. It's not so much fun anymore, because we've done it so many times. I know how to do it, and there's no excitement, nothing new about it. But that's again back to the sexual part of it. But the love feeling of seeing somebody you've been together with for so long, and they open the door and you just feel this joy.
Right.
being with them in present. That's where the love aspect comes into me. And then you say everything is impermanent. Enlightenment itself, is that impermanent too?
Is enlightenment? Oh, that's wonderful. Zen Master, that's a great question. So, Zen Master Dogen said impermanence is Buddha nature. Okay? Impermanence itself is Buddha nature. Okay? In the same essay, he said Buddha nature is always present. Okay? So Buddha nature is always present, and impermanence is Buddha nature, because impermanence is always present. Right? So, everything is in the state of becoming and beginning, including love and friendship. So becoming and beginning is transcendental wisdom. Yeah? Transcendental in the sense that I was talking about transcendental change before. So that everything, every color, every sound, every thing you touch, everything you think and feel is in a state of becoming and beginning. And that is always true. Okay? The thing that keeps us from awakening to that is we resent that. We don't like it. We want something to not change. Okay? So the paradox, the paradox is that we're engaged in this search for something solid, something substantial, something that won't change. And the great irony is that change itself is exactly that. Change is that which is always present and never changes, because change itself changes. And so it's a matter of letting go into the riverine world. So releasing all clinging into the riverine world. The problem with love is that at the same time that it expands one's sense of self to include another person in your universe, it also simultaneously gives rise to that clinging. Because the reason you want that person in your universe is because they give you such pleasure. It's so wonderful to have them around. So you don't want them to die, for example. But they will, or you will, or you both will. So then, this is really extraordinary. Someone you love dies. So it's a rope burn on the heart. Yeah, a rope burn on the heart. It's terrible. Nothing could be worse. So if you dive into that hole in the heart, okay, if you dive into that hole in the heart, if you practice the wound of love, then this is the greatest lesson that love can teach you. Because what you will discover is that wound of love will grow, become bigger and bigger, until it encompasses all sentient beings. And the suffering that you feel at your loss is no different from the suffering every mother has felt at the death of their child, every father has felt at the death of their son. That it is the same. And then you will understand why the Buddha said, all beings are suffering. And so even after our loved ones die, they are teaching us and present to us. And that is the greatest gift the dead give us. They are teaching us constantly. Does that make sense? So the gift of love transcends death. It goes beyond, even after the person has died. But only if you dive in to the wound of love. Don't listen to those people who say you'll get over it. You don't get over it. It becomes they become your teacher. They become your teacher, and that way they remain present to you.
I don't think you could have ever said it better, having lost a son.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. So relationships are worth it even in the face of their impermanence. You know, even in the face of their impermanence. Because the impermanence and change that goes on in a relationship is itself the transcendental, is itself enlightenment. Impermanence is Buddha nature. And nowhere does that become clearer than in the intimacy one has with friends, lovers, companions through this life. You know? And that would include, of course, monastic companions. So, you know, you know, this is the gay Buddhist Sangha, and I haven't spoken specifically about, you know, like gay relationships in the context of the Buddha Dharma. And I guess the reason I haven't is because, you know, like, and so I remember talking to my father after I met my lover and we were living together, and my father had a difficult time with it, you know, like, and I said to him, well, you know, it's really not difficult, it's just love. You know? So I said, do you understand love? And I knew that he did, because my parents, I'm one of those fortunate people that grew up with very good parents. You know, like, I have, you know, two parents who have loved each other their whole lives. They're 55 years. You know, like, so I said, do you understand love? And he said, yes. I said, that's all it is. This is just that simple. You know, like, so I think keeping it simple like that is what clarifies it.
This is a $64,000 gay question.
Yeah.
Is a casual sexual encounter with consenting adults where both partners treat each other with respect and affection and give what the other partner wants and walk away and never see each other again considered sexual impropriety? I mean, I know it is. I know it's considered that in some Buddhist schools. I mean, like, I used to tend to be arguing with me that no one is harmed by that, and that actually might be a positive.
Yeah, it could, you know, in theory. It's, you know, it's one of the interesting things about sexuality is that human cultures are always trying to hem it around with rules. You know, like this way of doing it is okay, this way of doing it is not okay. You know, like, and you know, like if you study anthropology, it's really culturally dependent. You know, like there's yeah, I can think of situations in which it would be it would fall under no harm. On the other hand, I wouldn't consider it optimal. You know, so and I'm just speaking personally. You know, like it's very interesting to me about this gay men and casual sex. If you read, say, the ancient Greeks, like Plato, you know, like on gayness and homosexuality, he never once mentions promiscuity. There's a really good dialogue of Plato's called Lovers, in which it's also translated as rivals, you know, like, because Socrates is sitting between two. It's in the gym. It's true, I swear. Like, Socrates is sitting between two very hunky guys who are interested in, you know, both of them are interested in the hunky guy who's lifting weights or something across the room. Yeah, but what's interesting, you know, like that would have been a perfect dialogue to bring up the subject of, you know, casual sex or, you know, promiscuity, and it doesn't appear in the dialogue. I'm not convinced that gay men are by nature, you know, like promiscuous. You know, like I'm not convinced. I suspect that's part of recent history. You know, like that, and has to do with you know, cultural suppression the psychology of coming out and all those kinds of issues, in our culture at this time. Because when I look at the literary remains, and I admit they are very few and very far between, I don't see that kind of manifestation.
What is your feeling about the Dalai Lama's statement about homosexuality?
Well, I mean, I don't agree with it. But
does that present a different cast spin on all his other statements? We don't agree with what he says about sexuality?
Well, there are a lot of things I don't agree with the Dalai Lama, but that's okay. I mean, like the Dalai Lama has said many times, "I'm just a simple Buddhist monk." Yeah, right. But anyway, first of all, the Dalai Lama is a monk, okay, and he is a celibate monk. And he takes his vows very seriously, like as did I when I was a monk. I mean, I was celibate for 6 years. I didn't do it. I was true to my vows. Seriously, so I think that his comments have to be taken in that context. That he's speaking from that institutional context. And in that context, I think they are meaningful and possibly valid. So the thing is that as Westerners, we have a tendency to project onto Buddhist institutions certain meanings which may not apply. And I've seen a strong tendency for people to equate like the Dalai Lama as some kind of Buddhist pope, a role which he has absolutely denied when the question has been made explicit. I mean, he's not even the pope of Tibetan Buddhism. There's different schools of Tibetan Buddhism. He is a very wise, venerable, learned, and wonderful man, and my admiration for him is second to none. And I don't agree with what he said about it. So I just leave it at that. In a way, I think people have made too much of it.
I think to me, first of all, the Buddhist monk, they don't involve the real taking business and family business. They have no right. They don't even just enjoy because they are the one who left family.
Yeah, the word monk in the original language means home leaver.
That's right, home leaver. But that's why the monk never pronounce us, your husband and wife. No way. No way. Well, they're blessing you, but they would never let them pronounce us husband and wife.
Thank you very much. And we didn't come to any, great conclusions, and I didn't expect to. And I really appreciate all the questions and comments. One of the things that I value very much coming down here monthly is that I learn a great deal from all of you, coming down here. And it's very, very important to me to be here, and I appreciate it. Since we used up all our time on the fourth precept, there is a fifth precept, but it's called, I have a few minutes. Yeah? A few?
Okay, yes.
Okay, a few minutes. And the fifth precept is to the traditional is not consume alcohol. The Buddha was he was a teetotaler, very much against alcohol. In the context of our culture, that's usually broadened into not to take mind-fucking substances, like drugs or, things like that. Why? If your mind is clouded, it's a prescription for, creating bad karma, doing harm to yourself and harm to others. It's as simple as that. If you read the story on how the prohibition to alcohol arose in the Vinaya, it's very interesting. Originally there weren't any of these precepts and rules. So the monks were meditating, some other monks were drinking and carousing, disturbing the monks who were meditating. This issue was taken to the Buddha, and he says, this is inappropriate. So that's why he issued the prohibition on alcohol, because it makes people unconscious, like and unaware of what they're doing to other people. So the overall meaning of that precept is stay clear, stay focused and clear. Do not deliberately cloud your mind. And I think that that's an appropriate way to end. Like to do not deliberately cloud your mind. And I hope that you all have a wonderful month, and that you soon become enlightened, okay? And that you soon save all sentient beings from suffering. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.